I'm Andrew, and these are the films of December 2007. December is always an interesting month. Award season is in full swing and everyone is clamouring for attention. There were some films that very much deserved the spotlight and some that very much didn't, along with some cinematic shovelware to fill in the gaps. Let's take a look. 5th of December. Juno. The indie film that defined 2007, if not the entire decade. Jason Reitman undeniably stepped out of his father Ivan Reitman's shadow with a surprise coming-of-age comedy hit. Juno follows the titular high schooler as she falls pregnant and decides to have a baby adopted after deciding against abortion. Ellen Page plays the snarky mother-to-be in what served as her mainstream breakout performance. Michael Cera, Jason Bateman, Jennifer Garner, and J.K. Simmons provided adequate support, but make no mistake, this is all about Page. A massive achievement when you consider what company she was in. Juno brought in $231 million at the box office against a comparatively tiny $7.5 million budget, making it the 22nd highest grossing film of 2007. 7th of December. Atonement. The first of several films this month based on books, Atonement finds its origins in Ian McEwan's 2001 book of the same name. The story concerns a young girl who tells a lie that would go on to haunt her for the rest of her life, and the atonement she seeks as a result. The film stars Keira Knightley, Saoirse Ronan, and James McAvoy prior to his true transition to Hollywood leading man. The film was roundly lauded by critics, with particular attention going to the performances and score from Dario Marinelli, with the latter winning an Oscar for Best Original Score at the 80th Academy Awards. Atonement earned $129 million at the box office on a $30 million budget, making it the 46th highest grossing film of the year. The Golden Compass. After the success of the Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter series, studios were seemingly desperate to buy up all of the high fantasy licenses they could. In 2005 we saw this pay dividends for Disney with The Lion, Witch and the Wardrobe, and New Line attempted to capture the same magic, The Golden Compass, based on Philip Pullman's Northern Lights. Whilst not a total failure, the results were far from ideal. The film was met with far less critical and popular praise than the works that inspired it, with some reviewers outright panning it. It had the same budget as The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, that being $180 million, but only generated half that film's haul, at a still respectable $372 million, making it the 13th highest grossing film of the year. A rocky production process saw director Chris Weitz quit halfway through due to feeling overwhelmed by the technical scope of the project, only to return less than a year later. This was all compounded by the backlash to the film from many of the source material's fans, who believed the book's themes and criticism of organised religion to have been diluted in the transition to the big screen. All this combined to dash any hopes of a sequel. 14th of December. Alvin and the Chipmunks. In December of 2007, Alvin and his furry cohorts were released upon the world, and nothing would ever be the same again. Actually, no, most things would be the same, but we just have to put up with these films for a few years. The much lambasted series began here, and in the years since, various directors would take it upon themselves to try and make the previous films seem good by comparison. Tim Hill had the honour of kicking things off, and he did so by making a fairly inoffensive title that kids might enjoy. Roger Ebert even said of the film, "About as good as a movie with these characters could probably be. At some level, the movie may even be doing something satirical about rock stars and the hype machine." I'm going to go out on a limb and say that he's giving the film a little too much credit. Alvin and the Chipmunks pulled in $361 million at the box office on a $60 million budget, making it the 14th highest grossing film of 2007. Tim Hill would go on to direct 2014's Grumpy Cat's Worst Christmas Ever, and the Alvin and the Chipmunks would provide a steady income for Jason Lee for another decade. I Am Legend. If you want a good example of a Hollywood film missing the point entirely, look no further than I Am Legend. The original book of the same name had a fascinating angle on the post-apocalypse, looking at it through an objective anthropological lens. How would we be seen by a new species? Would we be monsters to them? I Am Legend does away with this in favour of a more crowd-pleasing, hero conquers all affair. That's not to say it's a bad film in of itself, because it isn't. Had it been an original film, I'd likely tell you it was a fun action horror film, with a moving turn from reliable leading man Will Smith. It's strange given that this is the third attempt at adapting Richard Matheson's 1954 novel, following 1964's The Last Man on Earth and 1971's The Omega Man. It's a damn shame that all three of these films take the same sanitized approach to an oversaturated genre. Despite my misgivings, the film was a big success, nabbing $585 million at the box office on a $150 million budget, making it the 7th highest grossing film of 2007. 21st of December, Charlie Wilson's War. It's nice that legendary actor and director Mike Nichols got to go out on a high with his final feature, Charlie Wilson's War. The film features an ensemble cast featuring Julia Roberts, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Amy Adams, Ned Beatty, Emily Blunt and Tom Hanks as the titular Charlie Wilson. It tells the real-life story of Operation Cyclone, a CIA program to arm and support the Mujahideen during the Soviet-Afghan War throughout the 1980s. The biopic was written by Aaron Sorkin in his 6th feature screenplay. Whilst one of his least discussed pieces of work, that doesn't take away from its quality, as we see the same expertly crafted dialogue that he is celebrated for. Charlie Wilson's War was a hit at the box office, pulling in $119 million, making it the 49th highest grossing film of the year. However, the film did cost $75 million to produce, and when you add marketing to that, it wasn't particularly profitable. National Treasure, Book of Secrets. The National Treasure series is one best described by a simple phrase: what if Nicolas Cage was Indiana Jones? Imagine that sentence really puts the cat among the pigeons. As a result, we got a franchise that some of you may consider a guilty pleasure, depending of course on what you deem worthy of feeling guilty about. Nevertheless, the films have been immensely successful, with the first film generating $347 million at the box office. P.S. I Love You. P.S. This film isn't great. A fairly run-of-the-mill rom-com here, based on a similarly lukewarm novel. It sees the Scottish Gerard Butler cast as an Irishman, because there were no Irish actors working in 2007, were there? Hilary Swank plays his American wife, and even though Butler dies at the start of the film, him and his bizarro Irish accent just won't leave the poor woman alone, as he leaves a trail of letters and appears in weird visions in order to make her realise she can love again. Or something. Many critics felt the work was beneath Swank, an actress best known for her work in far heavier roles. Audiences didn't seem to mind too much though, as P.S. I Love You made $156 million at box office on a $30 million budget, making it the 35th highest grossing film of the year. Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. This Tim Burton directed musical is an adaptation of the stage production of the same name. Original writer Stephen Sondheim had reservations about a potential big screen transition, but was apparently pleased by Burton's work. The highly stylized film follows fictional Victorian villain Sweeney Todd as he cuts hair and throats, not necessarily in that order. The film is best described perhaps as one of the highlights of Johnny Depp's post-Pirates output, with many critics agreeing upon the high quality of his performance. Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber at Fleet Street brought in $152 million at the box office on a $50 million budget, making it the 36th highest grossing film of the year. Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox Story. Walk Hard is a film that may have snuck by you, as it is near indistinguishable from films that it was lampooning. Its principal target was naturally 2005's Johnny Cash biopic Walk the Line, and this is not at all subtle, as you can tell by the title. It also takes aim at 2004's Ray and 1991's The Doors, as well as the entire biopic genre. John C. Reilly plays Dewey Cox in his quest for stardom, a performance that resulted in a Golden Globe nomination. Most critics agree that Walk Hard provided a razor-sharp commentary on the genre, but unfortunately the film bombed, despite being written and produced by Judd Apatow. It brought in $20.6 million off of a $35 million budget, making it the 155th highest grossing film of 2007. 25th of December, Aliens vs Predator, Requiem. Don't worry, in case you thought the first AVP wasn't quite bad enough, directing brothers Greg and Colin Strauss have the cure for what ails you. The film is really, really bad. The original at least had the certain novelty factor that made it enjoyable if you're in the right mood. This one has no such lifeline, as no one cared anymore, in spite of the cheap cliffhanger at the end of the original. It's got a terrible script, acting, direction, creature design. I don't remember the soundtrack, but it was probably terrible. It's not good is what I'm trying to say. We live in a world where Paul W.S. Anderson is able to say that the sequel was worse than his original. AVP Requiem was profitable though, unfortunately, generating $128 million on a $40 million budget, making it the 47th highest grossing film of the year. Trinians. I think we all forget how prominent this film was in the zeitgeist of British 2000s. It had an incredibly aggressive marketing campaign centred around the Rupert Everett's cross-dressing and the bizarre cameo from Girls Aloud. It certainly helped that Trinians featured a who's who of British household names, including Colin Firth, Russell Brand, Stephen Fry, Paloma Faith, Gemma Errington, Lily Cole, Lena Headey, and Toby Jones. This added up to one of the most successful British independent films of the decade, pulling in £12 million on a £7 million budget. A reboot of a franchise dating back to 1957, most critics agreed it was a mostly style over substance and compared it unfavourably to originals. It would generate $29 million worldwide. The Waterhorse, Legends of the Deep. It feels like we don't get enough films tackling the Loch Ness Monster. Meanwhile, switch on Sci-Fi and there's a 50% chance of a Bigfoot or Yeti film is on. Hashtag Justice for Loch Ness. Also, I do sometimes worry that I imagined that one with Ted Danson. Anyway, The Waterhorse tells the story of a young Scottish boy who finds a strange egg. Out of the egg comes the fabled Waterhorse, aka the Loch Ness Monster. They become best friends and get up to antics and whatnot. General consensus seems to be that while the film doesn't do anything particularly interesting with the concept, it's an inoffensive and fun family film with a good heart. Waterhorse generated $103 million on a $40 million budget, making it the 51st highest-grossing film of the year. The Bucket List. A film starring Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman as dying cancer sufferers who decide to go on a road trip to check things off of the proverbial bucket list. What could go wrong? Well, a few things apparently. For one, the idealised treatment of cancer sufferers was met with criticism from some. Roger Ebert, a cancer sufferer himself, said in his one-star review, "The bucket list thinks dying of cancer is a laugh riot, followed by a dime store epiphany." That's always going to be a fine line you tread when making a film like this. How much liberty do you take with something that so many have experience with? Nicholson and Freeman will always bring a certain amount of charm, but that's only going to take you so far, and it clearly wasn't far enough for most people. They did do some good when it came to the film's box office, as it picked up $175 million on a $45 million budget, making it the 29th highest grossing film of the year. 26th of December. There Will Be Blood. Paul Thomas Anderson continued his trend of excellence with his fifth feature, There Will Be Blood. This film, about a prospector who discovers oil in early 20th century America, is not only considered by many to be the best film of 2007, but also the best film of the entire 21st century up to this point. Its intense examination of capitalism as one of the pillars of modern society only seems to become more relevant with each passing year, and the film's loss to No Country for Old Men at the 80th Academy Awards will be a point of discord amongst film fans for the rest of the Academy's lifetime. There are some who consider the film a slog, with its minimal storytelling, long scenes and droning soundtrack. It seems everyone can agree, though, that the work of Daniel Day-Lewis as a ruthless, aspiring oil baron Daniel Plainview is a standout performance of a career chock full of them. The film made $76 million on a budget of $25 million, making it the 71st highest grossing film of 2007. 28th of December. The Orphanage. Spain really does make excellent horror films. The Orphanage sees a woman, Laura, purchase the orphanage that she grew up in, with designs on reopening it as a home for disabled children. Needless to say, things get spooky when her adopted son Simon goes missing. With The Orphanage, Guillermo del Toro continues his trend of spotting young talent and interesting ideas and helping them meet their potential. He produces, as first-time director J.A. Bayona sits in the director's chair. The Orphanage was met with critical acclaim both in Spain and the United States, with praise going to the film's restraint and subtlety. An American remake has apparently been incoming for a while now, and while it's a shame, that's just the way the world works, unfortunately. The Orphanage took in $78 million, making huge profits off of its $4 million budget, making it the 68th highest grossing film of 2007. So which of these did you see in the cinema? Let us know in the comments below. And make sure to like and subscribe for more amazing content.